net over $1 million a year selling commercial real estate because I set 3 to 5 appointments per day. And in this video, I'm gonna break down exactly how you too can increase the amount of appointments so that you can make even more money. I'm gonna make this video extremely straight to the point. No funny business, so let's rock and roll. And it all starts with mindset and how you set goals. Because at the beginning of your career, you could be setting goals that are something along the lines of, I wanna speak to 20 people a day. I wanna have 20 conversations a day. And then all of a sudden that can change into, hey, I wanna have not only 20 conversations a day, but I also wanna generate 2 to 3 leads a day. And then what ends up happening is you start molding these goals into more and more effective goals for what you want to achieve. And what I've realized is that you need to be setting higher and higher goals, higher standards, even sooner in your career. So even if you're only been in the business a couple months or maybe a year or so, saying I'm going to set an appointment each and every single day, or 2 appointments, or maybe 3 appointments a day as a minimum metric. Because if you are not starting to say these things out loud and or set the goals where it even becomes possible in your mind, it becomes technically impossible because you've never thought about it being possible. If you're watching this video, I suggest that whatever amount of appointments you've ever set in a day, whatever your record was, so if it was 1 or 2, I recommend whatever that is, add 1 more to it, and then set that as your minimum daily standard. What that means is, this is just a goal, by the way. So every day, I take out a little post-it note and I write my goals on it every morning. And on my post-it, I write down how many leads I want to generate, how many appointments I want to set, how many contracts I want to sign, and I want to make sure I'm writing this all down each and every single day. So that's my minimum standard. So I'm looking at this like, okay, this is what I'm going to achieve today, and I'm not going to stop until I do. Or literally until I can't stay awake any longer. Raise your minimum standard, raise that minimum goal that you set up on a daily basis. Point number 2 is about tracking. So yes, it's important to have the goals, but it's more important to track because you can't improve upon what you do not track. So if you're not tracking how many conversations you're having a day, how many leads you're generating a day, or a week, or a month, or a quarter, or a year, if you're not tracking all of the data, it's kind of pointless. This entire business is based off of data. If your business is not predictable, it's because you do not track your data. What happens here is that if you track data and you say like, okay, well, based off of me having a conversation with 20 people, on average, for every 20 people I speak to, I set 1 appointment. And if that is accurate for you, you'll know like, okay, well, if I talk to hypothetically 60 people on average per day, I'm gonna probably schedule 3 appointments per day. But if you don't track your data, you won't know your law of averages. It's important to track your data. This way you can have a predictable and scalable business. Point number next is all about volume of prospecting. One key thing here is to think about how many calls are you making on average per day. Where if you wanna compete with somebody just like myself, who's made over 1 million cold calls in my career, it's going to be very difficult if you're having 5 or 10 conversations a day. When myself and my team are having hundreds of conversations, if not thousands of conversations per day. It's very, very difficult to keep up with that differentiation. It's like, how do you want to keep up with a professional athlete when they're going to be practicing 3 times a day for an hour each and you're only going to be practicing for 15 minutes? It's incredibly difficult to even compete, let alone ever make the same amount of money or ever be even in competition with that person at all in your lifetime. If you want to compete with high-level performing agents, you need to be able to outperform their level of prospecting. Because let me break this down for you. If right now your conversion is not great, which is totally normal, mine wasn't great at the beginning of my career either. If you don't have a great conversion rate from, call it a conversation, from a lead to an appointment, the biggest thing you should be working on is how many calls are you actually making. If hypothetically my conversion rate is 10%, if I have 50 conversations, I'm gonna set 5 appointments, and yours is 1%, you're gonna have 500 conversations in order to compete with my 50. But if hypothetically you are able to have 1,000 conversations a week instead of my on average 50, which is not accurate, but I'm just making a point here. If you're able to double or triple or quadruple what you're doing now, it's very hard for me to compete with that. So if you can make up for numbers, which that I can make up for in skill, you gotta play this game a little bit. And now when you get really, really good on the phone, like I am now, you can even play the game of like, okay, imagine if I was having 100 conversations a day, 500 to 700 conversations a week, it's very, very hard to compete with somebody who's very good and they also have a lot of conversations, right? Or then their volume is very hard to keep up with. So you have to be able to play your cards. So if you're not that great right now on the phones, that's okay. But the only way to compete with somebody who's better than you on the phones in your marketplace is by making more phone calls than they can ever think of making. Point number next is all about the amount of times that you close. We just talked about tracking data. The specific script that I use to close for appointments is So naturally, our next step is to simply set an appointment. What works better for you in afternoon or evening? That is a powerful script that if you use it at the right time with the right tonality, and then after you say evening at the end of the statement, you shut up and let the silence do the talking. What happens is that on average, a lot of people will just answer one or the other. This allows me, because I've become so proficient at stating that closing statement, it allows me to set a lot of appointments. So let's just backtrack for a second. If you track your data, how many conversations you're having, how many leads you're generating, what's gonna happen is the amount of times that you say that magical statement will also have a direct correlation to how many appointments you're setting. If you're saying right now, I don't set a lot of appointments, well, it's probably because you're not closing, right? You're not using that statement often enough. If hypothetically, you're like, well, my goal is to set 3 appointments a day. Well, then you probably need to say that statement something between 5 and 20 times a day. Not every single person is going to set an appointment. And I'm not saying it's going to take you 20, because if you say 20 times a day, you're probably going to be setting more than 3 appointments a day. And this is how I set so many appointments. What I want you to practice for this specific point is stating that close as often as possible. So the minimum metric should be saying it somewhere between 5 and 10 times per day. So the next point I want to talk about is having the right script. So for those of you who have yet to download my free script book and or do not have a script, make sure you go in the description down below and download it for free. Yes, absolutely for free. Download it and you're going to have access to a number of different scripts that you can use right now. And what's important to note is that these are scripts that I have used and trialed and tested myself that have allowed me to earn millions of dollars selling real estate. What's important to note about this script is that this is one piece of a very large puzzle when it comes to prospecting. Now, you and the best salesperson in your marketplace can both have the same script. But at that point, what's actually different between what you say and what they say? Honestly, the what isn't any different, but the how can be drastically different. And I want to talk about this for a moment. The difference between myself and you reading the same script is that the next piece of this is tonality. The tonality, which is the ups and downs in your voice, when to tie down a close, when to speak firmly, and when to be smiling and more gentle in your voice. It's specifically knowing when and how to balance speaking when you're talking to someone. So if they talk very soft like this, it's important that you match their tonality. However, they're talking to you really stern and they're talking really quickly, which we're going to talk about in another puzzle piece in a second. You need to raise your tonality, deepen your tonality. There's multiple different pieces here that you're needing to be paying attention to, which also dials back to even the words of mimicking and mirroring, which I learned years and years ago. Matching and mirroring your client's tonality is going to allow you to set more appointments. The next point here is rate of speech. Now, we alluded to this previously, but the main part about this is that when you're speaking to people all over the country, like I do, you can see this a little bit more openly. I'm speaking to so many different people. However, if hypothetically you have not moved, you don't travel a lot, which is okay, but what I'm saying is that you've been in the town that you've grown up in, or the town that you sell real estate in for a large portion of your life, it's very difficult for you to see the difference in rate of speech because most people in your area all have a similar rate of speech. What I want you to try to do is I want you to try to match the exact rate of speech as the person on the phone. So that person's talking really fast and they're talking about all these types of different details about the property. I want you to be able to speed up your rate of speech. However, that person starts talking slowly and they're asking you a lot of questions, but their rate of speech is slow. I want you to slow it down. If you don't have the same rate of speech, you honestly can be missing each other. I mean, how many times have you possibly heard somebody say, you're talking too fast, I need you to slow down? Hypothetically, someone's just hanging up the phone on you really fast. It might mean that you're probably not speaking quickly enough. You need to be able to understand where you're at in the conversation and who you're speaking with. Because listen, if you're speaking with an 80-year-old woman and she's speaking really soft and slow, and you're speaking really, really fast and talking with a high pitch, like, you're not going to connect very easily with that person, and she's more likely to hang up on you. However, if you're speaking with a business individual, a guy who speaks very, very quickly and wants to get details, come on, let's go. And you're speaking real slow, but hold on, I'm trying to figure out something. it's not going to be a good match and that person's probably going to hang up on you. Another key piece of this puzzle is also word vomiting. I have had so many people, matter of fact, I was just on the phone with somebody who speaks way too much. And what's important to note here is that the rate of speech, the tonality, and the word vomiting can all be just off, and you can all of a sudden go from setting, 3 appointments to setting 0 appointments, or vice versa. If you can get tonality right, you can get rate of speech correctly, and you can get the word vomiting out of your life where you speak directly, to the point, sternly, and you allow silence to do the talking, you can go from setting possibly no appointments or maybe 1 appointment a week to setting 3 to 5 appointments per day. The next puzzle piece here is letting the silence do the talking. I alluded to this right beforehand, but I want to explain to you what this means. So when you say the close of so naturally, our next step here is to simply set an appointment. So what works better for you, an afternoon or evening? Let the time do the talking, because the next person who speaks is probably going to lose, which means, and in this instance, there is really no losing, but the point is that they're probably going to end up setting the appointment on themselves. But what happens is this. So, I'm thinking that we should maybe, just maybe, if you have the time, set an appointment. Do you understand how that's just way too much talking? Let the silence do the talking. That's why the script works. You just read what the script says and then you shut up. You ask a great question and then you shut up. You just got to get straight to the point and then shut up and let the silence do the talking. The next puzzle piece here is about speed of pivoting. Now, this is something that takes a lot of experience, but something that will absolutely drastically change your conversion rate. So what I'm talking about here specifically is the rate of pivoting of how the conversation is going. So in the commercial world, this is something like you open up the line of saying that you might have a client who's going through a 1031 exchange, and I was just curious, John, would you possibly consider selling the property? And they go, no, I have no interest in selling, thanks. And what happens in that moment, from the second they say the word thanks, what do you think they're about to do? They're about to hang up. So what happens is you need to have the speed, you need to be prepared like a ninja to come right back with the pivot where you're going to be able to go, John, I completely understand. Listen, I called you out of the blue. I wasn't expecting you to say yes to that, but I'm just curious, John. I see that you own this property here at 123 Main Street. Are you open to buying properties that are similar to 123 Main Street? Are you possibly open to buying another property locally? Right, you got to shift into the buying conversation very quickly. Where you can be like, John, listen, I totally hear you. Wasn't expecting you to say yes, but I'm just curious. I have a few off-market properties that are just like your property at 123 Main Street here. Would you be totally against buying another property just like it? And you go right into that. That speed is going to allow you to all of a sudden convert now into a buyer lead. It's okay that they don't want to sell it. And by the way, maybe after having a conversation with them on the buy side, like, oh wow, this guy's actually legit, and this is not just some spam call, they actually might consider selling the property down the road. But that's what I'm saying. It's the speed of the pivot that can save a lot of your sales calls. So we have 2 last puzzle pieces, which I'm just gonna give out here, which are super important, which not enough realtors do. It's role play and watching game tape, because I wanna explain how imperative both of these are. If you want to improve as an athlete, there's only so many ways that you can actually understand what happened during the game. Just like an athlete would watch a replay of what happened during a certain situation so they can actually see what happened so they can make adjustments. As a real estate salesperson, you should be recording yourself on Zoom while you make your calls and then re-watch the game tape so you can listen to actually how you sound. What's your rate of speech like when you're speaking to somebody? Do you allow silence to do the talking, or do you speak too much? Are you properly using the closing script like we've talked about, or are you making common mistakes? The only way to tell is by recording it. And the only other way to tell is by role-playing often. So you have a specific objection like, listen, Henry, I'm not interested in selling. So what you're gonna do is be like, when you're sitting with a friend of yours, so you're gonna walk up to someone and just be like, I'm not interested in selling. And then you're quickly just gonna respond right to the objection, which is totally okay. I'm calling you out of the blue. But I am curious, if I had a local property just like yours, which was an unbelievably good deal off market, would you be interested in hearing more information about it? And the point is, you need to be fast to be able to make those pivots, fast to come back with those objections. And like, listen, if they say something like, listen, Hey, make me an offer. You just called me up out of the blue. I don't know, really, I really don't want to sell, but why don't you make me an offer? I'd love to make you an offer. So we can do two things. Either you can spend the next 60 seconds with me giving me a little bit more information so I can give you a great offer, or at least the best offer possible, or you could just let me throw an offer out there and you might tell me to F off. Which one would you prefer? The point is, and I know, listen, you can have all good and fun, but the purpose behind each word is important in the speed in which you can respond kindly in matching their tonality and matching their rate of speech and matching everything that they're doing, matching and mirroring like we've talked about here, where you're able to mimic these individuals on the call allows us to connect, and also with the expertise of knowing exactly what to say and when to say it is going to allow you to set between 3 to 5 appointments a day, just like I do. Listen guys, this video was so much fun to create, and I also want you guys to make sure you guys are getting the most out of this. So, if you're still watching this video, I urge you to leave a comment and ask any questions you might have, because I want to make sure that we drive down this point. I want to make sure we help you convert as many leads to appointments as possible. Make sure you give this a thumbs up, and again, if you have not downloaded the script book, make sure you do so. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video. If you're still watching this video, that means to me that you're a committed real estate agent and you're looking to take your life and business to the next level. I'm just curious, why have you yet to schedule your free, no obligation coaching consultation? All you have to do is simply go in the description down below, and people are telling me this call has been the most unbelievable, the most powerful call they've had in their entire career. And here's just a few of the individuals who have taken full advantage of this call. And my mission is to support as many realtors as possible, build a 6- and 7-figure net income business so that they don't have to rely on this industry anymore for their everyday income. If you're a committed realtor, which I can seem like you are, all you have to simply do to take full advantage of this free coaching consultation is to go in the description down below and schedule your free call now.